afternoon, everyone. My name's Trevor, and I will be your stripper today. And today we are stripping down this 1970 Chevy Camaro Z28. This Camaro definitely has some rust on it. For those of you new to my channel, I'm going to take you through stripping this car down to bare metal using a chemical dipping process. It's a three-step process. The first step, we're gonna get this car tied up. I already got the ropes on, and we're gonna lower it into our alkaline paint remover and degreaser tank. And we're gonna do that until all this paint, filler, undercoating, and everything is down to bare metal. The next step, it'll go into our rust removing acid bath. The acid is actually a food grade acid, so it can take up to about 1 to 2 weeks for it to remove all the rust on this car, especially this car because there is a decent amount of rust. After we pull it out of the acid, we're going to neutralize it in our alkaline to stop from further flash rusting, and then it's gonna be pressure washed. In between each step, the car is pulled out and pressure washed. When it's all said and done and all the paint, undercoating, rust, and everything is removed from the car, it'll then be dipped in our water-based rust inhibitor right here. Half of the car is dipped, half of the car is sprayed down, and that gives you 30 days until you're ready to prime. But let's have a quick look at this car before we get it in our alkaline tank. So sorry for the background noise. We have some other stuff going on in the shop. But up front here, you can see the firewall is pretty solid. We got a little bit of rust, but nothing crazy. But when we come up here, you can see we got a decent amount of pitting and rust forming. Have a look on the inside. The floor is held together pretty well. You can see we have some heavy seam sealer in a few spots. And you can see we got some rust holes coming through right there. And I'll show you a few more areas that look like that. Come back to the quarters. They actually look pretty straight. And you can see all this rust here. Apparently this car was sitting for over 20 years just sitting in the dirt. You can see all this pitting and rust on the roof. Back to the trunk area. Trunk is surprisingly solid. I imagine some of this is going to open up. This looks pretty thin, but it's not as bad as I thought it would be. Look at the back there. Have a look at the passenger quarter. Here's where that big rust hole is. You can see that'll definitely open up a little bit. A little bit of rust on the rocker. But all in all, this thing, for sitting in the dirt for over 20 years, it's in pretty solid shape. And you can see this is all gonna open up too. But let's get this thing in the tank. So I just pulled the Camaro out of the alkaline bath. And funny thing about this one is there was some construction going on down the road from us and someone hit a gas line. So none of our tanks had heat. This thing spent the whole weekend in the tank without any heat. So I wasn't very hopeful that a lot of this paint was gonna come off because the alkaline doesn't work as well unless it's heated. But as you can see, it looks like a lot of this paint's still gonna come off. I'm gonna pressure wash it real quick and then we'll have a quick look at it and see what's left. So I just finished the first pressure washing of the Camaro after pulling it out of the alkaline, and a lot more paint came off than I thought was going to. I have a feeling if we had the heat in the tank, all this paint would have came off. But we're gonna have a quick look at this real quick. So up front here, you can see on the firewall, basically everything came off. We have a little bit of seam sealer and stuff still on there, and a little bit of paint, but the majority came off. And you can see how much rust was under this paint. But like I said, if we had the heat, I believe all of this would have come off. And you can see all this rust on the roof. But the floor, there is a lot of good metal in the floor. We do have some surface rust in a few areas and a little bit of rock coming through in a few spots, but it's all not that bad. You can see the driver's side has a little bit more rust. Come over to the quarters. You can see all this rust under the paint here. This is all rust, but all the paint came off the quarters, no problem really. I think this thing's gonna turn out to be in pretty decent shape. We might have a few spots open up, but all in all, it looks pretty solid. Trunk area has a few pinholes coming through, and I imagine will open up a little bit. You can see we got a little seam sealer here still. The heat will help with that once we get it back on. Go to the passenger quarter. It looks nice and straight. We do have some repairs up here on this pillar. It's covered in a little bit of filler, and you can see some brazing underneath there. But have a look from this side on the floor. A little bit of surface rust. Here's a closer look at those rust holes coming through on the rockers there. Oh yeah, that's a big piece of filler and metal there. That all just came out. That's pretty bad actually. But all right, and we're back to the front, and let's get this thing back in the tank. Ready whenever you are. Before we take this car over to the wash bay, we're going to have a quick word from today's video sponsor, Oadro. Hey everybody, I'm going to take a minute to shout out our sponsor for today's video. Today's video is sponsored by Oadro. They were kind enough to send out these Ford F-150 off-roading floor mats. And I'm outside here at Luther Ford in Evansburg around back, and they were kind enough to let me showcase these mats in one of their trucks. And we're going to be trying it in this 2024 Ford F-150. All right, let's get this opened up and see what they sent us. So it looks like we got the driver and passenger side and the rear liner. Awesome. They seem to be really well built. And one thing I noticed, they don't have any odor to them at all, so that should be good. I know sometimes when I put floor mats in my car smells like rubber for a while. But these seem very durable. They have all these grooves, so if anything spills, or like perfect example, we're in Pennsylvania, all that snow melting on your boots, it'll go in those grooves and keep your shoes nice. But let's get these old mats out of this truck and see how these things fit. And as you can see, the Oadro are going to be a huge upgrade over these carpeted mats. This is going to soak up so much water and mud and everything. So let's get these factory mats out and put in the Oadros. In the rear here, you can see these don't protect a lot of surface area. They're two pieces. The Oadro is one piece, and it's going to cover this whole area and protect the whole area. Okay, we're going to put the rear liner in first. This thing's pretty big. I'm going to set the camera down real quick. Get it adjusted in here. As you can see, it fits perfectly. There's no warpage, and everything dishes up like this to collect the liquid that comes off your boots, or if you spill anything back here, if you have kids. Put the driver's side in. Everything's nice and tight fitting. Get everything lined up. There we go. That looks great. Look how perfectly that fits. And now the passenger. Sorry, doing this one-handed. And the nice thing about these, they're super easy to clean too. You can just pull them out of here and hose them off. But man, does that look way better. I appreciate you guys sticking around. Make sure you guys go check out Oedro. There is a link in the description below. I really appreciate you guys, and I appreciate Oedro for sending these out. Thank you very much. So now that we got all the paint and filler and everything off of there, here we have the car going into the acid bath. It's gonna spend a few days in here, then we're gonna pull it out, neutralize it, and pressure wash it. The 1970 Camaro Z28 is finally finished. I got this thing down to bare metal, but it definitely made me work for it. The paint wasn't an issue at all, but there was a lot of rust on this thing, as you're gonna see when we go over it. There's still a lot of good metal on this thing, but there are some very rough areas and they are going to have their work cut out for them. But let's have a quick look at it and you can see what we're working with. So up front here, you can see the firewall is fairly solid. There's not even a lot of pitting on it. But when we come up here, you can see both these pillars have some rust holes forming around there and a lot of pitting. It's all pitted up front here. And you can see this other pillar about the same. The rockers, very solid. You can see we have some brazing there. Could have been replaced. There was some brazing on the passenger side quarter, which we'll go over. The whole quarter was replaced. You can see we have some rust holes coming through in the floor, but all in all, this floor is pretty solid. As you can see over there, we're gonna head over there in a second. That's where the worst of the rust is. And you can see the roof completely pitted. There was barely any paint on the roof. It was mostly rust. You could see the color difference between where there was paint and where the pitting is. And you can see we have, oh, nope, it's back here. Some rust holes coming through on the flares and in the rear of the quarter. Looks pretty straight though. And you can see more pitting all over here. Come back to the trunk area. We have a whole bunch of pinholes coming in through and a decent amount of rot back here. Here's the passenger, oh wait, let me show you the back real quick. We have some rust coming through there and you can see that grazing all along the bottom. And here's where that quarter was replaced. You can see all that brazing there. And right below the pillar, you can see where they cut and replaced the quarter. And it looks like they have a whole bunch of rivets in there. And take a look at this rust down here. Pretty significant. That's definitely the worst of it. It's not even attached there. You can see we can move that whole quarter. And you can see down there all that thick rust that was eaten out. Got some Swiss cheese back there. Have a look at the floor from this side. See all those pinholes coming through. And let's go back to the front. As you can see, there are a few rough areas on this car. It's gonna take a lot of work, but it turned out really nice. And we took care of all of that very thick rust. Been a little bit since I had a Camaro in the shop, and the funny thing is, we have two in the shop right now. I have one in the rust inhibitor tank right there right now. So I'm gonna have basically back-to-back Camaro videos for you. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I appreciate you guys sticking around to the end, and I will see you at the next car.